So I set up a simple website because I realized that we couldn't solve a problem if people refused even to acknowledge that it existed.
A good start to that would be to actually provide evidence that the problem exists, but there I am being rational again.
And that what I really wanted people to have was that experience that I'd had of seeing these things kind of rolled out in front of them like a map and realizing how much there was and how bad it still was. So I set up a very simple website called the Everyday Sexism Project. And I asked women and men to add their experiences of gender imbalance on a daily basis. And
okay, is this supposed to be a talk about gender imbalance, or is this supposed to be a talk about sexism? Because you're kind of using these two interchangeably. Now, I agree that if you're going to say that all gender imbalance is automatically sexist and wrong, you might have a valid point, but that's like me saying I have an 18-inch dick, if you start at the spleen.
Anything from the tiny, niggling and normalized things all the way up the scale. And I didn't have any funding or any way of publicizing it, so I thought that maybe 20 or 30 women would add their stories, and I hoped that it would build a sense of solidarity and help to raise awareness. But instead, things took off a little more than I expected. 50,000 women from all over the world added their stories in 18 months. They were women and men from countries everywhere, people of all ages, races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, gender identities, religious and non-religious, disabled and non-disabled, employed and unemployed.
Great. Did any of them actually mention anything sexist?
We heard from a 7-year-old disabled girl in a wheelchair and a 74-year-old woman in a mobility scooter who encountered almost identical experiences of screamed abuse about female drivers. A female reverend in the Church of England was asked if there was a man available to perform the wedding or the funeral service, nothing personal. A man was congratulated for babysitting his own children. A woman working in the city was asked if she would sit on her boss's lap if she wanted her Christmas bonus. A woman who worked in a video store found that every time she went up the ladder to get fresh stock from the storeroom, her boss would smack her on the bum, and when she came down again, he'd look down her top and say, "You know why I hired you."
Okay, I'm not going to say that these stories are bullshit, but the majority of these still aren't sexist. So out of what we have so far, at best we have maybe 2 or 3 that are actually sexist. And might I point out that she says she had 50,000 to choose from. Also, these stories are bullshit.
A waitress was told to make a choice between having an abortion or resigning when she fell pregnant. A 15-year-old girl wrote that she knew that she was clever and funny and she could do anything she wanted to do, but really it didn't matter if she became a doctor or a lawyer because she knew from the world around her and from the media that the only thing that really mattered was whether she was sexy, whether her breasts grew and her waist narrowed, and whether boys found her attractive.
So she self-identifies as smart, yet says that she believes what's in the media and all of that your body is the only thing that matters stuff. Sounds like a pretty stupid bitch to me.
A 13-year-old girl wrote to say that she'd been showed a video of sex at school on a boy's mobile phone, a video of porn, and that now she's so scared to have sex that she cries every night because she didn't realize that what sex was the woman hurting and crying. A woman...
Okay, at this point, don't you think it's about time we drop the pretense that you're actually talking about sexism or oppression or discrimination against women or whatever? Can't we at least just admit that all you're really intent on doing is bitching about men while having a pity party for every woman who ever had a man look at her funny on a Tuesday? Seriously, if all it took was watching some porn to traumatize this kid, then she is fucked the instant she actually has to enter real life.
In Pakistan talked about hiding abuse for the sake of family honor. A woman in Brazil tried to ignore 3 men who catcalled her, only to find that they tried to drag her into their car. In Mexico, a woman was told by her university professor, "Calladita, te ves más bonita." You look prettier when you shut up.
In fairness, pretty much every guy who's ever talked to a woman has thought that at some point.
This was what happened when I gave a speech about politics.
I agree. It would make listening to you far more palatable if you got your tits out. Please?
And this was what I got on a daily basis, but not just once a day, up to 200 times a day, just for speaking out. And ironically, these people who were sending messages because they wanted to shut the project down were just showing how very vital and needed it was.
Oh, oh, Laura. I can't tell you how cute it is that you really think that. But, you see, the reason that you're getting the responses that you're getting is that they don't take you seriously at all. You see, there are these special types of people on the internet called trolls. These people seek out morons who say stupid shit in public and take a great deal of pleasure in fucking with them. So if you go into public talking about how women are victimized and how you don't want people to tell you that you have nice tits, you are in fact telling these trolls exactly how best to fuck with you.
The fact that it was so scary for some people, for somebody just to want to talk about equality, just to want to raise women's voices and give their stories a platform, that they had to tell me exactly how they wanted to disembowel me, and with exactly which weapons and in what order. And not just that I should be raped, but exactly how I should be raped and in which orifices and where and where.
So, in other words, the trolls are trying to fuck with you, and you respond by going out in public and whining about it to the world, effectively spreading your legs and welcoming them in, yet you claim to wonder why you get fucked, taking offense at the fucking you receive, and which you encourage them to do. You then take the fucking they gave you and use it to fuel your little pity party, which only makes them want to fuck with you more. It's like a totally symbiotic relationship built on fucking. I guess what I'm trying to say here is, Laura, you're a trollop.
And then something else started to happen. After we'd received about 10,000 stories, we started getting some which had a very different tone. We started getting success stories. We started hearing from women like one who said that she was a keen runner and she often experienced harassment, but she thought it was just the way things were. And then after reading the stories on the website, she realized other women were standing up to this and other people were acknowledging that this shouldn't be normal and it wasn't okay. And the next time she went running, a guy happened to call her over from his car and ask for directions, so she went over and helped him. And then he reached out of the car window and grabbed her breasts really hard, really hurt her. And she said she felt all of the experiences, the feelings wash over her that she normally felt in that situation. Terror, embarrassment, shame, the urge to run, but she also felt something she hadn't felt before. And it was that feeling of those women behind her standing up. And it gave her the strength just for a moment to stop and take down the guy's car number plate, and now he's been charged with assault.
So, it took the combined voices of 10,000 women to convince her to take the bold and brave action of writing down a license plate number. I wouldn't exactly call that a win for Team Woman.
We were able to take 2,000 of the stories we collected that specifically described women's experiences of harassment and assault on public transport to the British Transport Police when they decided to look at the way that they police sexual offences. We were able to break them down to hear from women's own voices why they hadn't felt able to report, and then work with the British Transport Police to send out the message to people everywhere that they were taking this seriously and that they could report it. And so far we know that that project, Project Guardian, has raised reports of harassment and assault on the tube by up to 20%.
And what about the violence and harassment of men on the subway? Did you take that into account? The only reason I ask this is because, we're supposed to be talking about equality and everyday sexism. So it seems to me that if you didn't take this into account, might be a bit sexist.
But we also started hearing people's individual stories of standing up. And that was really fascinating and crucial because these weren't stories of waving banners or going on marches, as valuable as those are. They were stories of women and men around the world finding their own very unique and individual ways to stand up that worked for them and made a difference in their lives. We heard from a man who said that he'd never really thought about harassment before, but after reading the stories on the website, it made him have a completely new insight into what it actually felt like for women. And the next time he saw another guy in the street harassing two women, he ran after him and tapped him on the shoulder and just said, "Sorry, can I just ask you, why did you do that?"
Not to belabor a point, but did any of these stories include women standing up for men? Again, I just ask because of how keen you are on that whole equality thing. So you have this story here about a man stepping up to defend two women, but why shouldn't he have expected them to stand up for themselves? That's what the whole women's lib thing was supposed to be about, right? Women being strong and standing up for themselves, not needing men to protect them and fight their battles for them. It seems to me that if you really believed that stuff, you shouldn't be condoning what he did, you should be condemning it. After all, he treated those women like children that needed a man to protect them. Or is it only infantilizing women when it doesn't work in your favor? Again, I think I'm starting to see the sexism. A pity I don't think you see it with me.
And the other guy had no answer because he'd never been asked that question before. Because it was just normal for him too. He'd grown up in a world where that was just normal and that was just something that men did.
That's because it is something that men do. That's why before we had all of those rules about treating women a certain way. It's why there were certain areas of society that we didn't let women into, because women were too fragile to handle man stuff. Then women, exactly like you, stood up and told men that you could handle all of the same man stuff that they handled. So we started treating you like men. Now you're bitching that you're not treated like special little princesses again. Seriously, you feminist fucks really need to make up your minds.
It's not necessarily about targeting perpetrators, and it's certainly not about telling victims that they should be behaving in a certain way or reacting in a certain way. It's about the people in the office that made it difficult for that woman to feel able to speak out. It's about the people on that bus that day that looked out of the window.
And that, in a nutshell, is your idea of equality. It's not about women taking responsibility for their own lives or actions. It's about everyone else taking responsibility for women's lives, for keeping them safe, caring about their feelings, about how safe they feel. It's about being equal to men, but not in any way that actually places any responsibilities or burdens on them. Those are all up to the men.
So be part of the change. Be the cool aunt or uncle who buys a chemistry set for their niece or a play cooker for their nephew. Be the teenager that tells his friends that actually it's not okay or funny to refer to women as sluts or whores. Be the person that lets somebody who's been groped realize that it will be taken seriously and they have the right to report it. Be the tabloid editor who commissions an article that isn't illustrated with a picture of a pair of women's tits. Be the person at the bus stop that steps in when they see a woman being harassed. Or be the person on the bus that stands up and says it isn't okay. Because our voices are loudest when we raise them together.
Oh, fuck you. Can I see your tits?